Welcome to KiwanisTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner. On this, the longest running cable access program in the entire world, produced at the facilities of WDHS at Dearborn High School. And today we're talking about covering the world. And we're not the news sort of way of covering the world. We're talking about cleaning the world, not just picking up papers. We're talking about painting and cleaning. And to talk about that, we have Robert Meschke from A&M Painting and Powerwash Company. Robert, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
So, you are president of this company, chief cook and bottle washer like I am in my company, but you weren't always in the painting and power washing. Where did you grow up and how'd you wind up down here?
I'm actually from Marquette, and I moved down here right after high school. And I went to school to do database work and architecture and drafting. And when I met my wife, we went to school and we dated, and then we got married early on. And I like to tell people that it was the first big fight in our marriage when I came home and said I quit my job.
That could probably cause a little bit of stress in the relationship, but she still Mrs.?
She's still my wife. We're still together. We're celebrating 34 years this June. Married. We've been a couple for almost 40 years.
Well, congratulations. So you quit your job. So why did you quit the job, and what did you jump to when you quit? Well, why did you quit, first of all?
Well, I already knew how to do decks from growing up in Marquette, and I grew up in a cedar home with a large deck off the back. So my family, my parents had me learn how to do that from an early age. And so I already knew how to do that, and I took the job. I actually worked at Johnson Controls. And it only took me 2 or 3 months before I realized that I was way too hyper for that. There was just going to be, it was going to make me insane. I was never going to be able to sit at a desk. So I decided that I would power wash and reseal decks until I found a real job.
So with power washing with cedar, I can imagine that, in my experience, or bitter experience, is that you can burn your initials into the wood pretty easily with the power washer. That ever happened? No, never.
Well, I'd love to tell you I never made a mistake. I've made just as many as anybody else. There's the running joke that there's a red tip that is just a circle, and we call it the bullet tip, because if you have a high enough PSI, you can actually write your name in the cement. And I've got scars across the back of my legs where somebody decided to be a smart aleck and zap me across the back of my calves, and that's a learning curve.
So that's not it's not a happening thing. So you want to get into the power washing business, and so is it? You don't just power wash decks. The market for power washing goes way beyond decks and sidewalks. Talk about what you would want to power wash and why you want to power wash something.
What's really common for us, decks, of course. I do about 150 of them every summer. And the common mistake when people try to pressure wash or power wash their deck is it looks easy. It looks like one of those things that I'll just rent one from Home Depot, or I'll pick up one, inexpensive one, and you instantly find out that it's a lot like painting the clean on instead of taking the dirt off. So every place you start and stop, you leave marks. And when you do it in a deck or something that's wood, you'll leave marks on that now you have to sand these off. Or I run across decks regularly that somebody decided, well, I tried to do this, and if you would have hired me in the first place, it would have cost about half as much money as it did for me to fix the damage you've already done to your deck from digging up into the wood. And we pressure wash a lot of driveways, a lot of sidewalks, storefronts. There's a big market for, you work into the local convenience store and people walk up and they'll spit out their gum as they're going in, or they'll put out their cigarettes and just drop them, so they end up to be very dirty. There's a big market for pressure washing the sidewalks and the entryways for that. Drive-through lanes, everybody spits their gum out when they're going to order, so those drive-through lanes end up covered with gum, and there's a big market for that as well.
So I guess I didn't know what I didn't know.
Of course.
about those types of things. And if someone's conscientious about their business or the appearance of their home or their deck, they want to be able to make sure that it looks better. So you have like the most glorious resurrection you've ever done. Can you talk about what it looked like when you started and how it turned out when you got done?
I really, it all circles back to decks because that's where I started, but I really like that I'll show up on somebody's deck and customers ask me, I don't know if this can even be saved. I don't know if this can even be saved. I think, do we have to tear this down? And I love to tell people that you can, even if you burn this deck right to the ground, I can fix it because there's 3 guys on our team that have our builder's license. I've designed decks, so everything from replace the rotten boards, and I love it when they look absolutely, they've been neglected for 10 years, and we can come and do it, and they'll look new again when we're done. I love the look on people's faces.
But when you replace the old boards with new boards, don't they look different? And how do you get them to match? What do you
There's multiple different ways. A lot of times when you're the most cost-effective way to do that is after we replace the new boards, then you use what's called a solid coat sealer over top. And how I describe it is that red and that green cellophane you get at Christmas time. If you put that over top of something, you can see everything through it. It just looks red or green now. If you put 2 or 3 layers on top of it, now that's called a semi-transparent. You can kind of see through it, but some of the details are lost. If you put about 5 or 6 layers on top of each other, now you can't see through it at all. And that's called a solid coat sealer. So if we replace boards and we're going to coat everything with a solid coat sealer, everything looks the same. It's going to look the same anyways. But if you're doing a transparent, then what I'll do is I'll power wash the entire deck, and then the new boards, I'll take one of the boards after it's cleaned and take it to Sherwin-Williams, and we'll custom match the color that it looks clean onto the brand new board. Then we'll put the brand new boards down. Then we'll put the final coat over top, and it blends in flawlessly.
So you just said something there that I hadn't thought about, but just like you can take a can of base paint at Sherwin-Williams or another paint store.
Correct.
And tint it to whatever you want. You're saying you can take then and tint your deck stain to match an existing deck so you don't have to go to a wild color, but new boards can be matched to the same color as the old boards.
I do it all the time. I do multiple condominium complexes, and they're pretty specific about they want this color is what color all the decks have to be. And so that happens fairly regularly, that if it's a semi-transparent or a transparent, then I have to match that stuff now.
And you can get a pretty close match.
I get a close enough match. That's where the magic comes in from. Old school, they used to dye wedding shoes to match the girls' bouquets and stuff at like Kenny Shoes or something. If you find a good one, somebody who can still do that, that's what they do at Sherwin-Williams. They'll do it in the back and custom match it right for you.
So I'll say the Home Depot word, but they can match the stains and colors there. But you've been mentioning Sherwin-Williams. Why would you want to go to for stains? We'll get to paint in a minute. Why would you want to go to Sherwin-Williams for a stain as opposed to any place else? And what kind of difference do they have from what you can get at a big box store?
Well, the difference is I use Sherwin-Williams, number one, because I like the way they stand behind their product. After the years that I've been doing this, I'd love to tell you that there's never been something that turned out the wrong color. There has. And when it turns out that, for instance, a customer picks out a color, they tell me this is the color number, this is what I want, they're out of town, they come back and I've painted the room and they say that it looks great but it's not the right color. And then we match up the color and it turns out that it was a mistint. Sherwin-Williams, there's no issues with them. They understand, okay, this was a mistint. Not only do they give me the paint to repaint that room, but they'll actually cut me a check. That was my labor to paint it again. That was why I use Sherwin-Williams.
Doesn't happen a lot though, right?
No.
So, yeah.
No, a handful of times over 28 years, but enough times that when there's been pilot error. I mean, I'd love to tell you I've never made a mistake, and I like that when there was something that went wrong and I asked my paint rep what happened here, and he said, you happened here. You'd used the wrong primer or you used the wrong this. That's when Sherwin-Williams also, when I was new, they would step in and say, well, tell you what, we're going to give you some of the new, we're going to give you the right primer for a very dramatic discount so you can do it right.
Let's backtrack a little bit, because my youngest daughter just bought a house last year. She had a deck on the back, and she wanted, and it had not been attended to for a while. When she got a power washer, she went out and borrowed my Home Depot special.
Sure.
Yeah. And it turned out okay. But you were right when you say when you change directions when you're spraying, so not that you want to give away the secrets because you're in the business of doing power washing, but
sure.
What's the secret?
Start at one end of the board.
Yep.
And try to keep the same distance from the board, the same, because it's going to change the color. And start at one end and don't stop in the middle of the board. Go from one end all the way to the other, all the way, then come back, then go all the way across, never stop in the middle of a board. And for what you just said, actually, I give advice on how to do that all the time. I like to think that part of the reason I'm still in business is that I will absolutely tell you how to do it yourself, because if you can do it yourself, do so. Call me when you need me. I think that that's a better way to get business.
So eventually I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to need someone to fix it too, right?
Well, that too. That too.
There's a method to Robert Meschke's madness here, talking
Yes.
about these sort of things. So, again, we're talking about a deck. You know, the actual, I'll say painting or staining, that's probably the easy part. As in all maintenance jobs, is the preparation.
Right.
And what's the ratio of time for assessing, then doing the prep, and then the final coats?
Oh my gosh, I would say that just the part where you're actually doing the labor of doing the final product, it's easy, 90% prep, 10% actual work. The entire, from stem to stern, the actual putting the paint on is probably more like, it wouldn't surprise me to turn out it's 6% is the actual that. The rest of it is knowing what product to put where, is knowing when to put it on. Even after all these years, I still find primers that I put my hand on my head and say, I did not know that. And I mean, even after all these years, there's still something to learn.
So a deck is not a flat surface like a wall.
Right.
And you've got grooves that go down deep into the nether regions of the world. How do you clean that to prep it? How do you, how do you put the primer? How do you finally stain it to match?
Well, sometimes when you're going to prep a deck, there's a number of different things. The first thing is always to pressure wash it. Always get your power washer off, get everything loose off that you can. Then you can actually see what you're working with. You can actually see that this sealer is still stuck from before. This was the wrong sealer, so it's flaking off. You can see what you've got. And then sometimes it can just be pressure washed, scrape the loose stuff off, sand, depending upon what you're going to put on top. Again, if you're going to use solid coat, it's a lot more forgiving than if we're going to strip this all the way down so that, for instance, you can see all the grain through it. Now then, you chemically strip it, which is a biodegradable stripper that you put on. And where people tend to go wrong is that you'll put this stripper on the deck and then you rinse it all off, and the part that people fail at is that was an acid that you put on there that it's an oxalic acid, and the pH level needs to be neutralized. So you put a brightener on top that's a base, neutralizes the pH, and then you can put the sealer on. If you don't do that, you'll put a new coat over top of it, and the acid that's in the wood will eat it from the inside out, and it fails.
A lot of science.
It's a lot more chemistry than you would have that I would have even thought.
A lot of science to the art.
Yes.
Well, we're going to come back. We'll continue our discussion with Robert Meschke from A&M and Painting and Power. We'll talk about the origin of A&M in a little bit too. But first, we got some words about Kiwanis from Kiwanis. I'm Gary Gardner, continuing not just the decks. We're going to get in the inside part and the painting stuff rather than just the mundane decks. Don't go away.
shows so much creativity in one little finger. Of course, where's that little finger been?
Welcome back to KiwanisTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner. We're continuing with Robert Meschke. What's your official title?
Owner, I suppose.
Owner.
But
Owner.
I think it's more like workhorse.
Workhorse from A&M Painting and Powerwash. And what's the A and the M of A&M Painting and Powerwash?
A&M stands for Ashley and Madison. It's my two daughters. When we first started the business, there was... I split off from another business that my brother still runs to this day, and I needed a name, and the guy that I work with suggested, why don't we name it after our children? And A&M was the natural fit.
Okay, so I got that question answered, but you dodged the other one. How do you get into the grooves on the deck?
Well, the cleaning part, the pressure washer does most of the work. Okay. It can be done chemically, but the sealing part, when you're going to do that, we use a sprayer, and you spray it on, and then afterwards we use a nap roller that's done specifically for this on the end of a pole to work it into the grooves. And that's another piece that a lot of people miss, is that you actually need to work it into the grooves to make it stick.
Gotcha. Let's move inside, or to the flat surfaces now,
okay,
rather than the deck surfaces. 90% of the work in deck work is prep. What's the ratio in interior painting and exterior house painting?
Oh, at least the same. That's very similar. I'll tell on intricate jobs. We just got done doing an intricate job that a customer wanted a nursery painted in the colors from one of those children's shows. It's called Bluey something. And it was 3 different color stripes that were every 6 inches across, and it was 3 colors. So the taping that had to be done to make that work was just, you would tape for hours and hours and hours and then paint for 10 minutes. And then you'd tape for hours and hours and hours and paint for 10 minutes.
I can never get the tape, when I pull it off, to have a straight line. There's a trick to that.
There is a trick to that.
And
the trick to it is, when you put it out, you have to trust the force, I suppose. You put it up, and when you pull it down like that, instead of trying to do little pieces, you put one piece here and you put one piece way at the bottom, and then put it down and then press it across. And the trick to getting the lines like you're talking about is, a lot of people don't recognize that that tape is designed, it's the chemical that's in the tape that stops the water from coming through, or the paint from coming through. So you put that tape down, and you take a little sponge or a rag, and you get it wet, and it activates the chemical that's inside of there that repels the water, and that's how you get that razor sharp line.
Okay, that's good. So now I've learned that part of it. Painting, the preparation doesn't do any good unless you've got good material that you're putting on as the final coat.
100%.
Talk about, first of all, primer. How important is it to prime something? Always, or sometimes, or depends?
Well, I'm going to use cabinets as an example for this particular piece. We'll talk about cabinets. Is that I have one crew that's what they do, is exclusively kitchen and bathroom cabinets. And when you do this, let's start with a piece that, let's say it's a raw right from the factory. It doesn't have any finish on it at all. Now, if you're going to paint that, you're going to use 2 different types of primer. One of them is extreme bond primer. It's exactly what it sounds like. The stuff is designed specifically so that it bonds to the wood, and it bonds to the paint so that it doesn't chip or peel off. But the piece where people go wrong is, there's a primer that's called a shellac primer. It's actually made out of ground beetle shells. This is the stuff that smells terrible, that you remember when, you'll know if you come across it, it smells like a nail salon. It's got that really pungent smell to it, but it seals the tannin oils into the wood, and it stops them from bleeding out. If you don't do that step, that's where you get the horror story of somebody painted their cabinets white, and then 6 months later it looks like somebody's been smoking really heavy in the house because it's bleeding through the paint. The oil's bleeding through the paint. So 100% that is mandatory. You have to prime with that, with both of those primers in order to hold. And then we use a top end called Sherwin-Williams Emerald Urethane. That's the top coat that we put on, and with those it sticks.
So the top end price compared to the bottom end price, compared to the result, compared to the effort, there's a continuum.
Oh,
And I don't think you go near the bottom.
no.
Yeah.
No, not unless you want to paint them again or if you want angry customers.
I don't want that.
No.
So paint is, I've used to have rental houses, and I've been painting my houses, and my wife doesn't let me do certain things in our house, but I can do my rentals.
Sure.
But I found that putting a little bit more money into the higher quality paint, it goes on better, it looks better, and it lasts longer.
100%. We use, as the business progressed, I've progressed up in paint every single piece until now. Our workhorse is the Sherwin-Williams Emerald. You'll hear me keep saying Sherwin-Williams and that Emerald multiple times because I stand behind it. It's part of our brand is that we use the top end Sherwin-Williams stuff. And there's a direct correlation to how the paint looks. I like to say that I can make a glass of Kool-Aid look like orange juice. But as soon as you touch it, as soon as you go near it, you can tell. Your eyes can only see so many DPIs or dots per square inch when you put something on. So yeah, it's like the example of a square that you could only see 250 of these squares, and it doesn't matter if you put more in there, it's still going to look the same. On inexpensive paint, you're going to get 250 little pieces. On Sherwin-Williams Emerald, you may get 1,250 or 1,500. That's the difference between when you try to clean this and it doesn't wipe the color off. It doesn't wipe it away.
The 90% of your effort is preparation.
100, yep.
So why would you waste your time prepping something that's not going to last?
100%. You said it. You just said it yourself. And you would think that your answer would be, especially with painting with that emerald urethane, it says right on the can that it's got a 25-year warranty. So if I paint everybody's houses with that, how are you going to get return customers? You're kind of painting yourself out of business.
Right.
Well,
people want to change their colors.
They do want to change their colors, and if you find out the way that there's enough, people want to paint the inside of their house once they see that. So
right. So, and your time is money too. So, as a homeowner, as a dad who's helping his daughters paint their houses and things like that, I know my time. I want to use it, but I want to make it worthwhile. But again, if I want to get it ready for that, like the last 6%. It makes more sense to use the higher quality. But the price, what's the differential from the top of the line to down to like the mid-range?
There's a pretty extreme difference. And you're right that if you're going to, young people tend to be, and myself included, when I moved into my first house, there wasn't a lot of extra money that was on there, so I had a bunch of my buddies come over and we got bottom end paint because we needed to paint, and I paid them in beer and pizza to help me paint the inside of the house. If you're going to do that, then there's really no reason to prep it out like that. But if you're going to use that expensive paint, you're not going to want to waste it, and it goes on in a way that I actually went to that type of paint because my guys wanted to use it because of the way it goes on. It goes on much easier, and in the end, the time that's spent using good paint versus the time that's spent using mid-grade to lower paint averages itself out that it's actually more cost effective to use the good paint because it takes less time to make it right.
I want to get this in because I haven't put it out there yet. If people wanted to go to A&M Painting and Powerwash, there's a website for that. Not intuitive though. It's a little bit different. What's the website? The
website is www.am.
Actually, minus, okay.
am313906.com.
And the 313 is for the Detroit area code, I guess, and 906 is for?
906 is the entire Upper Peninsula has the area code of 906.
Okay, and where's your main law office located? Where do you work out of?
We're based out of Allen Park.
Okay,
and we
so
service the whole Downriver area.
Downriver area. So we've talked about the prep, we talked about the paint. What about the application tools and the brushes and the rollers and those sprayers? How important is that too?
Very important, and each one of my guys will tell you that they have a very specific brush, and when you get a painter who's a good painter, those brushes, if to the layman you would think, you've got to be kidding me, $25, $30 for a brush, but these guys take care of their tools like this is how they make their living. The brushes that are the good ones, not only you wouldn't think that not only are they good and they hold the paint the right way and they're cut the right way and they make a straight line, but the good brushes are actually balanced in a way because painters tend to get carpal tunnel. And they need to be in a way that they fit in their hand the right way. And if you never painted, if that wasn't your job, you'd never think about that.
And clean up. How do you clean a brush? How do you get the paint off the brush and then on the ferrules?
Well, thank goodness for the VOC laws.
Okay.
The VOC laws, they've changed things that they really don't want us using the oil-based paints. They want us using it's called a hybrid, and it's a water and a urethane-based paint that acts like oil-based but cleans up with water, so that it's much easier to clean up than it ever was before until you start getting into the specialty paints, which is like the pre-catalytic paints or something to that effect, that then you need to use mineral spirits or something to clean it up. But those are mostly specialty paints that aren't involved with painting houses and stuff as much as you would think.
So we're down to like our last minute or so. So if Robert Meschke wanted to talk to someone about why they want to use A&M Painting Powerwash, why?
One of the things that I stand on personally and the company is that we're very ethically based, is that I've been told regularly that I need to get off that island. Nobody operates like that. And I'm more the guy that if we estimate that this is gonna take 25 gallons to paint the inside of your house and it only takes 23, I'm not gonna charge you for those last 2 gallons. And that's important to me. It's important to me that I can look my wife or my kids in the eye. That's more important to me than the money end. I tend to believe that if you pay attention to being fair and being honest, that the money part will come as a byproduct.
So they want again, www.am313906.com.
Yes.
And for the old people, phone number?
313-806-3127.
And you still use phones, right?
They still use phones, and I'm the guy who gives all the estimates. I'm the guy who will come to your house.
Robert Meschke, A&M Painting and Power Washing, thank you for coming on. It's been my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you for tuning into KiwanisTalk. Next time you do a paint job, think about it. 90% of your time prep, 6% in the finish, materials. Next time, bye-bye.